Yeah, James and I were talking before we started to record about this possibly being the biggest weekend of Florida State's recruiting cycle, with everybody that's expected to or possibly going to commit.
Yeah, we're going to start off on the 14th with Ty Hilton, which is someone I think Florida State's done a really, really good job with, especially experience and like. Really, what I want to say is I think Florida State does a better job than most any other universities at explaining to these young men what they're going to be utilized as, what the vision actually is for them in the offense or defense or special teams, and then also obviously what the vision is for them moving forward in their career. And I think they do so well with it because if it wasn't, yeah, it was Ty Hilton that had made the statement that it was the biggest visionary conversation he has had as far as what he would be utilized to do, and that's why he was really intrigued about what Florida State was bringing to the table for him. So when you hear kids say certain things like that, when you get into depth, all the conversations that you hear with recruits are it was a fun visit. It was we did this and we did that, but most of the guys that Florida State ends up landing, there's a little bit more depth in that interview itself. Like they'll say stuff like, well, I really like what they're doing with the defense. I like the scheme that's set. I like what they would do with me if I was there. So there's been actual conversation of what you would be utilized to do. But then you move to Danzy. He's going to be committing on the 15th. You've got Danzy coming out of Florida High, and James knows obviously more about any of that than I do because that's his home. So, James, if you want to talk about Danzy a little bit before I move on to the next guy, please do so.
Yeah, again, elite athlete. World actually, this isn't an exaggeration. He's actually got world class speed as a 400-meter runner. I think actually who Florida State stands to lose this kid to more is USA Track and Field than any other school. He actually broke 46 seconds as a high school junior, which is pretty impressive. And I remember the track coach at Florida State, my friend Ricky, really likes him. And it's like, this kid's going to run 45, dang near 45 flat before the beginning of next season. And so he's a running back, but he's very long on the offensive side. But I think as we see right here, I don't know. I think Chris might have pointed out, he's an athlete. He can play both sides of the ball. It matches up. And I think if he's playing that, it bodes well for us because he's a guy who can actually, even in college, putting on about 10 more pounds of muscle, it's probably going to be breaking 45 before we know it. But he loves football. So elite athlete, elite speed, great get. And as I always joke with people, there's been 3 former Florida State University Developmental Research School athletes that have gone on to Florida State. All 3 have gone to the NFL. That would be Martin Mayhew, Brandon Jenkins, James Coleman, and hopefully it'll be Mekhi Danzy. Will fall into that fold.
Yeah, I had quite a few people because when I announced about Danzy potentially coming to Florida State, I'd announced him as the same position that you see up on the screen as the safety position because Pat Surtain really liked what Danzy brought to the table as far as his abilities. I mean, just the athleticism alone was catching eye, but then you get Dugans that sees him, and then Yak sees him. Like, everybody saw this kid that they could utilize him. Everybody, wide receiver, the defensive coordinator saw what they could do with him, the DB's coach, and then you go on and he goes to Coach Yak in the running back room. And then they obviously see what you could utilize him as a running back, and also what he's done in high school. Just holds really well with what it is. He's actually moved up in his composite score over the I think it was last month is when they officially moved him up. But that's what I want most Florida State fans to pay attention to, the actual composite score, and not worry so much about what the ranking is, because Florida State's not going to take 30 kids this class. They're not going to take 20. I'm got them somewhere in between 20 to 23, 24, somewhere around there. And I think everybody's freaking out because we might not be in the top 5 because we're not taking as many as some. But I'm really, really expecting this weekend to be big for Florida State as far as recruiting goes, and it very well could be the biggest weekend for Florida State in recruiting as far as how many of them do it. But I will say that there's going to be a really big surprise either at the end of this month or somewhere in this process of recruiting, because there's a few gentlemen that are really starting to catch on to Florida State. But if you move on to Jonathan Daniels, I don't know what else you can say. Like, there are a lot of fans that ask me, why does one site have him as a 3-star, another site have him as a 5-star? The only thing that I can really say about that is one's doing their job and the other one's not, when it comes in particular to this kid, because there's no doubt that he's at minimum a high 4-star, and that's at bare minimum. So anybody that's got him less than that, they just aren't doing their due diligence on what he is. And I'm not quite sure how they operate, so I don't know why it's so different. But if you look at what the young man brings to the table, it's the perfect length, it's the perfect size right off the bat. He could be very, very well used after a couple months here at Florida State once he does come, because Coach Storms will get hit that weight right where it needs to be, up. And to me, I think he's actually heavier than that 280 that they've got up there.
And that's obviously the site that's not doing its job right there.
I think have you seen how UF fan base has turned on 3, Chris?
I think Chris has left us.
Oh, okay.
If he is frozen.
Yeah.
But yes, Jonathan Daniels there, and the composite is a healthy 4-star, and that's weighted down obviously by the 3-star status on 247 Sports.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of these guys that their rankings come based upon if they can verify certain characteristics. Like, is he as big, is he as tall as what they think? Maybe what they value as offensive line. When I'm looking at O-line, and actually it was a great discussion that somebody had about watching highlight films. I need to see, are you a road grader? How do you look? Because very, very few times, if I have an elite defensive end in high school and I know that this is an elite offensive lineman, I'm not lining my elite defensive end up against them. Not because I think my kid isn't any good. It's that the purpose is to exploit mismatches. So I want to get to the quarterback. I want to make my path as easy as possible. They can figure that stuff out in college. So these guys don't really necessarily see that. And then camps, I mean, we could talk it, but at the end of the day, like, these guys aren't in full pads. They're in shorts and T-shirts. So it really all comes down to who's the more aggressive player. And that's not always the best athlete in those situations. But I think if you see multiple sites, like if one site has a 5-star, one has a 4-star, one is a 3-star, I think that just means we all know he's a good player, but we're just not. The consensus is everybody isn't sure.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is you see how big of a jump it is even on this page here. You go from an 89 from 247 to his same 247 composite score, jumps all the way up to a 94.6. That's a huge difference. In
which, not to cut you off, Chris, if you do any kind of rough math here, means that 89, it's only one of 4 services, weights him down. The other 3 are probably in the 96 to 97 range.
Mm-hmm. I didn't even hear, they've got him ranked as nationally the 104th best player overall, 5th inside offensive lineman, and 12th player in Florida. So when Florida State lands him, they'll be landing the top 150 guy. I think after they're done doing their due diligence on Mr. Daniels, that he'll actually be a top 100 kid. And that it is what it is. Like our blue chip ratio, which is what everybody is concentrating on right now. Like last year, guys, I think we were somewhere in the 40% range. 40% of them were blue chip players, and we won 10 ball games. So either the development process at Florida State is extremely better than what we anticipated, or they weren't ranked properly coming out of high school. Either way you look at it is what it is. But Jonathan Daniels, I think he commits this month on around the 15th there, 14th, somewhere around there. It could be later than that, but that's when I think it is. And we'll see. I think he comes to Florida State. I think that Coach Atkins has done everything that you possibly could in this recruiting process. And Atkins usually doesn't lose out on the guys that he wants, and he really wants Jonathan Daniels. And if you move on to 3-star, most people have him as a 3-star. And Kevin Levy, which is an athlete, he was a little bit later in the process. Florida State getting after him. And in reality, we didn't make it known that we were really after him. They were actually after him quite early in the process. There just wasn't a lot of talk as far as us and media goes about us going after him, because that was in the process of when you had like the Charles Lester, the JoJo Trader, Jeremiah Smith was popping up a lot. And that's what's weird. You see on one page they got him as a wide receiver. You look on another page, they got him as an athlete. And he entered as a wide receiver. That's what he entered as. So 247 does have it correct. But what I would say the high side is for him, he is 6 foot. I think the 170 is pretty accurate. But this kid's ability to go up and get the ball, to be 6 foot, he can really jump. He's got a lot of air under him. He knows how to get up. He's also, what James would say, he has a pretty damn good running posture. Like he knows what he's doing as far as running. His speed's a little bit more of he's the quick guy, not necessarily that his top speed's crazy, but his breaks out of route is pretty nice. I don't know if we keep him on the wide receiver side though. I honestly think Pat Surtain could pull him over and put him in a cornerback situation. But we'll see. We'll see what Florida State does with him. I really like the kid myself. I think now a lot of people are now after him when they weren't on he wasn't on their radar, and Florida State's had him on their radar for quite some time. And this is one that Florida State, I think, needs to be careful with. And what I mean by that is only because we were on him early, only because we have a great relationship with him. Everybody that's been pushing for him over the past couple of months before the dead period hit, I think a lot of people really did a good job at recruiting him and getting him to actually have a decision to make. So I think Florida State has to continue to recruit him very hard because people have really started putting interest in him. So I still think he ends up at Florida State as far as verbally committing. What I'm more or less worried about is, will we get him to sign in December? Because I think a lot of people are going to be pushing for him. I also think that we're going to pull in a couple more guys that might threaten the situation a little bit, but we'll have to see what happens. But as of right now, I've got him coming to Florida State for sure. And then the next gentleman is Charles Lester, July 28th. Everybody's marking it. Everybody's ready for July 28th. I'm personally ready for it because I'm ready for Colorado fans to stop talking. I'm ready for that all to go away. We've talked about Charles Lester so much that I'm running out of things to say about him without being completely repetitive. But it's not – this is the great part of this. It's not just that he's a 5-star. It's not just that he's one of the most talented corners in the country. It's not that he's just a genius on the football field. His leadership ability is also extremely amazing. He's very vocal. He's also very proper as far as how, when I say proper, I mean as his play goes, and also sharing with his teammates on where we're supposed to be lined up, what it is that we're doing. He keeps everybody in line, keeps them on track. And I really like that because it reminds me of Jalen Ramsey. Ramsey was always pointing out, no, take 2 steps over. You're supposed to be on this hash. You're supposed to be there. And that's what you need, is that coordinator on the field to make sure people are dead in place, because what they see is they know this kid's going to come here and this is where his route's going to break, either inside or outside. Is he going for a dig route? Is he going out for a post? What's happening? And you need to be here because this is where he's lined up. And I really like Charles Lester in every aspect of what football means. I think a lot of people are questioning the way that he's putting out things in recruiting. Like, they don't like that he's dropping a picture in Alabama. They don't like that he's dropping a picture in Colorado, Florida State. Here's what I will say. At the time that I checked this, he dropped a picture in each one of those uniforms, all around about the same time frame. And there was about 175,000 views in the Alabama one. There was about 105,000 in the Colorado one. But the picture that he took in the Florida State uniform, he was over 375,000 views. So fans from Florida State side are definitely supporting him, definitely following him, because I think as smart as he is on the field, he's going to be one of the smartest NIL business kids that we're going to get in this class, because he really knows how to work the followers, the viewership, the getting people to talk about him. I don't know if anyone else's name for Florida State recruiting wise, I don't know if any other name's been said more than Charles Lester. I really don't. I think he's probably the hype of the class. He's the most talked about, the most everyone's concerned. Where is he going? I think I was concerned at first with Pat Surtain and him because of the situation where we put Coach Woodson, and as far as he left, we brought in Pat Surtain. I didn't know where that was going to go. And then it was crazy because they hit it off. Like, Pat Surtain and Charles Lester, it was like they have known each other for 10 years. And that was really great to see, because coming in as a brand new DB's coach, and you're trying to go after whales, not, just the biggest bass in the pond. You're going after one of the biggest whales in the ocean. And for him to be able to click like that and just start recruiting right off the bat, I give huge kudos to Coach Surtain, and also for Charles Lester being so open-minded to what Florida State was putting together in the coaching staff. I don't know what I can say negatively that I would like to see worked on for Charles Lester. I'm not going to say that someone's perfect, because that's far from the truth. But this young man might be one of the most ready players that I have seen in a decade. Like, I literally think the kid could step on the field for Florida State tomorrow and hang with the best of them. And that's how I see his abilities. And I think his athleticism speaks for itself.